Uh, all right. Well, should we get started? Should we roll this intro here?
Go for it.
All right. We'll do this classic. Oh, let me just check to see here if anyone's waiting to get in. Okay, cool. All right. We'll do this classic story intro. Okay. Have you ever looked at your search list and wondered, is this worth my time? Is there money in here for me? How much? I need to know. And thankfully, Susan Tatum, I want to make sure,
Perfect,
is your superhero on this subject. Don't let us down. All right, so
no pressure here.
No pressure. So Susan is president at the Conversion Company, and she's been on here a number of times. If you have not said hi to her or connected with her, you definitely should. Smart gal. I'm just going to let you, Susan, take over, say whatever you want to say. You are in charge. I might politely interrupt you if I have a question or if I want to just geek out. Okay, awesome.
Please do. And
go for it,
shut me up if I start rambling.
No, I'm not worried about that at all.
Okay. All right, so I'll show you guys this is a report that we do for our clients. Are you seeing my screen?
I sure am.
Let me make this bigger.
And can you just tell us a little bit about who your clients are and what you do so that we can get a grid for where we're going?
Okay, so business to business, complex sale. We do a lot of, I came out of the technology industry. So when we started off, it was mostly tech companies, and we still have a number of software companies. But we also work with agencies, consultants, solopreneurs. And what we do is get them conversations with their ideal prospects. That's our main thing.
Mm-hmm.
So before we start any engagement, or at the beginning of any engagement, we want to know whether or not it's worth continuing, and based upon what's inside LinkedIn that would actually work for the client, whether or not we can get them good conversations. So what we're doing is looking at the size of the market. So that's how many accounts are really there, because you run a Sales Navigator search, and there's a bunch of companies that show up that are a page that LinkedIn put up there, and they've even collected them. So we're diving in to look at, and all of this is estimates, right? So market size, prospect accessibility, is Mike on a treadmill? Multitasking.
I can feel my cholesterol going up just watching him. Can I ask you a quick question? Can I ask you a quick question, Susan? When you're looking at the size, are you looking at the company count or the individual person count?
That depends upon the client. And so if the company equals one client for them, then we're looking at the company account. If they're individual buyers, then we're looking at that.
Okay.
This sample here is, I don't remember. Anyway.
Yeah.
And sometimes we look at both, Isaac.
Yeah. Good.
Prospect accessibility is just how hard is it going to be to connect with these people. And then opportunity runway is we look at the pipeline value and also the number of months that LinkedIn could continue to provide conversations. So most of our clients want 10 to 20 conversations a month. And we look at this because if we're focusing on a certain target market, and I see, okay, there's probably 6 months worth of conversations in there, we have to get the client thinking about where they want to go next. So that's why we keep an eye on how much is left there for us.
May I ask you another question on that? With the 10 to 20 conversations per month, are there expectations that the conversations are happening on LinkedIn, or is that off of LinkedIn, like they've converted to an email set?
It's a phone call.
It's a phone call. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Even before now, we didn't have any clients that were doing on location calls. They weren't actually going to the place for the initial phone call. They were doing it all, presumably by Zoom.
Yeah.
So these were the things. We started off with running a Sales Navigator search, and I'll show you the spreadsheet that goes behind this when we're, this I think is just a better way of seeing what we're looking at. So all of the things down to that other part, we could look at via a Sales Navigator account. But as we've talked about on here before, that list that Sales Navigator is going to pull up is about 30% inaccurate. So we have to go through that and eliminate some of those. So in this case, this was a very specific New England-based, I think it was an event that they were doing. So the numbers are lower than I would usually want to see. So there was like, so here's an example of both of them. Oh no, these are people, Isaac. These are CIOs and CTOs in certain company sizes. So we looked at the addressable market size, that's equaling what showed up in the Sales Navigator account, the Sales Navigator search, times the accuracy discount, which I'm applying as a 30% discount.
Interesting.
And then we put other well, I'd rather err on the side of the number being too low.
Yeah, well, I think it's smart. Is it? I think it's smart.
Why isn't the database accurate, Susan?
You'd have to ask LinkedIn that question. In some cases, it's just that we're learning as we go, that we think we're looking for something and we're not really looking for that. And we're like, oh, we should have put this other thing in there and this is not right. Sometimes the person that owns the profile or the company page puts the wrong industry in there.
Yeah.
And sometimes they just show up and you just have no idea why they're on the list. But that has been running consistently for the last 2 years, about 30% inaccurate, with one exception, and that was higher education. When we ran a search for colleges, basically is what we were looking for, and it was 100% accurate. Everybody we only look at the first 100 to do the sampling, and I talked to a market research person to see if, am I just making this stuff up or is this actually viable? And he said, it's a sampling and it's giving you a better idea than what most people are getting about what's really there. So this other qualifiers,
do you use not commands and excludes and stuff to try to increase the accuracy?
Yeah.
Okay.
We do. But sometimes, Mike, I find that we can go too far with that and it will start eliminating people that it shouldn't have eliminated.
Yeah, it's always a balance.
Yeah.
Do you know what Eric Jakewith told me? It's a really good pointer on this. And we use Boolean every day, and he said, I don't want to butcher it, but he was saying, get your list and then basically like flip it. So whoever you were including, exclude them and vice versa, so that you see the other bucket and check and see if there's anybody that you had missed from your criteria, which I thought was great. So I've been doing that, and it's been helpful to kind of clean up those last pieces.
Yeah, that's
sorry to interrupt you.
You do tags and lead lists, then you can pick up the strays, right, and just add a tag or a lead to a lead list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate that you have to go page by page on that, though. That was making us crazy. Anyway, so then the other qualifiers in this case, this guy was looking for CEOs that had a strategic focus as opposed to being business focused. Like what we had to do was go look at their profiles and see if they were talking about solving business issues and being partners and building teams and that sort of stuff versus delivering projects on time, talking about the technology and the uptime and things like that. So that for us is where the magic really comes into it when we go and we look at those other qualifiers, because that's what allows us to really hone in on the right people, so that because our clients in many cases don't have a sales team, and it's the subject matter experts and the owners that are having to do the business development as well, and they can't afford to spend a lot of time talking to people that aren't relevant.
Yeah, for sure.
Now this one, go ahead.
I feel like the biggest for like you and I, when we're doing sales, I feel like what really resonates with our clients the most, if they're the owners of the SMBs, is that you should be spending your time closing the deals, not getting the leads.
Correct.
Because they get that their time is their most valuable asset. They wear too many hats. They're busy. And that's like what usually closes the deal. And then if I'm working with a larger sales team and I hear them saying like, well, I could just do that. And I'm thinking you're not going to last because
No,
you're
you won't be
spending, you're
consistent.
literally, they're spending their time doing the wrong things and they're going to underperform. So
That's very true. Very true. The prospect accessibility, and I'd love to get you guys feedback on this. The formula that we're using is the network size, and then I weigh it by 50%. Because the reason we do that is because somebody can have a really crappy profile, but if they've got a large network, then we can feel like we can get to them because they bothered to build their network. And we look at the profile quality. We've got a 10-point ranking system that we put together when LinkedIn first started doing the social selling index, whatever that is they call it. It was based on the criteria there for the profile part of it. And just things that, we're guessing at what's important on a profile because there's no analytics, or I haven't been able to find any analytics about what people are looking at. And then we look at—
Talk to you about that. I have a 10-point deal too. We do an assessment for a sales team.
Yeah.
We go to ask these 10 questions. There were really like 12, but we wanted to get it to 10 so you could score it.
Yeah.
And stuff. But I'd like to talk to you about that, Susan. We'll compare messages and stuff.
Okay, cool.
So Susan, so if you're the prospect accessibility, so you take like the first 25 people in search and you look at those individuals' network size times 1.5 plus profile quality. And then what's the profile quality? Is that, do you like an internal?
Yeah, that's a ranking. Like, do they have a good picture? Do they have an about section? Have they listed all of their employment? Are they using a header? That kind of thing, to just sort of, we're just looking for an indication that they're going to be active on LinkedIn, or that they're really paying attention to LinkedIn. Then the activity level, of course, is, are they posting? Are they engaging? The activity level to me was in the past more telling me how quickly we can get to them, because whether or not they're going there all the time, than really eliminating other people as being going to LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Reality for me at this point, because we've been doing this for 11 years now, is that I'll look at these numbers, but it's more of a gut feeling and a knowledge that we've tried to work with these markets before, and so we kind of know how hard or difficult it's going to be. So unless it's a brand new market for us, we do this, but it's it's, I don't know. And LinkedIn has just gotten so spammy and changing lately that I'm not sure. I keep thinking about this needing to be tweaked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I really like the approach you're taking, Susan.
Thank you. It's as much for our protection as it is for the clients, because we don't want to not be able to produce.
Yeah.
So this is where we're looking at how long LinkedIn would be a source. And we're taking the market size, the engagement rate, and on this one I used 35%. And that again is based on the market and what the accessibility showed, and then I weigh it with what I know to be true, or I found to be true in the past. And then we use 25% commit rate, that 25% of the people that engage will commit. That's low for us because we spend so much time up front focusing on who we're reaching out to, that it turns out to be substantially higher than that, but again, using low numbers. Yeah. So we found, there's 8 months worth of his current connections that are ideal. And then these are from just based on different sizes. This is
Susan, do you ever encounter, like when you are vetting your own leads, if somebody has too short of an opportunity runway where it's like not worth all of the time it's going to take to do setup? Do you have may I ask, do you have like a minimum opportunity runway where you'd say you have before you let someone come on?
We either want to see a year, or it can be shorter, but we know where we're going after that.
Yeah.
So that we can expand the market or change industries or, whatever, expand the geography or whatever.
Yeah.
But for the amount of work that we have to do to get this up and running, we want to be sure that they're going to be around for a while.
Yeah.
And what I thought you were going to ask was, do we ever find that that we tell them it's not worth it? And we do. It tends to happen. I see it in manufacturing, in the broad manufacturing industry. Sometimes I see it in facilities managers inside school systems and that kind of thing. But that's changing. They do get better and better. And this is just like a total pull it out of your ear based on, there are no numbers behind this one here, but the clients just like to see what's the recommendation on this.
Yeah.
And then this one, this is how we get to the pipeline. You can see down here, this guy had an average annual client value of 50,000. The target was to get him 10 calls a year. The conversion to opportunity, conversation to opportunity rate we put in is 25%, which is we do get that. That gave him 30 opportunities, $1.5 million in opportunity value, and if he holds a 20% close rate, that's 300,000. And so we've got a spreadsheet, which I can show you that the clients can play with the numbers all they want to.
Yeah, I love it.
Susan, may I ask, if you got 120 conversations per year, out of what size of a target audience?
We shoot, Mary, to get so an engagement rate of, the answer to that question is it is out of 80 to 100 on a monthly basis. So if we want to get 10 calls in a month, we have to reach out to 80 people approximately.
Okay. So you're running about 10, 12%.
Yeah, I would actually have to use a calculator to figure that out, I swear. There's another, let me show you, let me get out of here, come on.
We tend to see, just while you're moving around, we tend to see if it's the right audience, the right seller. Of the active conversations, about a 10 to 15% conversion rate as well. If that was the number that you were, I was just, so if 10 to 12.
I think Mary was asking how many people, what was the size of the number of people we were reaching out to that actually became conversations. So the list from after it got, now our list they go through about 3 human filters before we're actually doing the outreach, because again, we want to be sure that they're good for clients. So this was a 2019 results. 200 people agreed to a call and 150 calls were done. That 25% drop off drives me nuts. It's an administrative thing. It's because we get somebody to agree to a call, we hand it off to the client for them to make the arrangements. And we've worked with this particular client. We worked with them to get a process for the administrative assistant to get a better, to not lose so many calls there. But that's just one of those things. And
sometimes people they ghost you.
Totally, yeah.
It totally happens too.
Yeah.
Susan,
go ahead.
Do you, when you're doing that, do you ever get into your client's CRM and send the email template for them on their behalf as another way to save them some time? We're
doing that more and more, Isaac.
Yeah.
When I started this company, it was strictly LinkedIn. That's all we did. Over the last couple of years, but really the last year, again, because of the noise on LinkedIn, we have begun adding email. And I think I've always felt that multiple channels of outreach are the best way to do it.
Yeah.
And we just hadn't bothered to take the time to figure out how to
Yes.
do email outreach. And
I feel like I'm looking into a mirror and you're talking to me. Yeah, we've had the same exact journey. It's good. High five.
and here we are.
Yeah.
So 75 of those 150 conversations were turned into opportunities.
Awesome.
And he ended up closing 19 clients.
Awesome.
This client's, his average client value was 15,000. So I think it was about 250,000 that he did, somewhere around that.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Do you ever recommend tools to reduce that 25% drop off? I mean, I use things like Calendly to try to set up appointments and have found a significant increase in success.
You know, it's funny. I use Calendly personally as well, because God knows it's easier just to be able to send somebody to go and pick their own time. But we do find that there are people that don't want to do that.
Yep.
They're just people that don't like electronic calendars. So what I usually do is for my own stuff is, and I think they're doing it with our clients too. I stay out of the implementation because I screw things up. But we give them an option. Like, if you don't mind using an online calendar, this will save us some emailing back and forth. And sometimes, depending upon who the person is, we'll just ask them, what's the best way? How, should I contact your assistant, or what's the best way? Or that's what we have the client do anyway.
What we started doing with that about 6 months ago, and I had a client ask me for help about this, which is what kind of like was a catalyst for doing this with other clients as well, is they were saying the request for a call to follow through was low. And part of that was just because they were too busy. And so what we started doing was we would say on LinkedIn, we'd say, can I email you my calendar to grab time? So we're getting permission. They'd say yes. And then we'd confirm that their profile email was the right one, and they'd say yes. And then we'll go into the CRM and we'll send an email reflecting our conversation, giving them kind of next steps, why we're excited to have the conversation. And then in the email, we'll do a hyperlink on the text, here's my calendar to grab a time. And then they can do that. And then what we'll do is as soon as we send the email, we'll go into LinkedIn and we'll say, I just emailed you my calendar, did you get it? And as soon as we started doing that, the follow-up, like right after we send the email on LinkedIn, the accept rates, I'm going to ballpark it and say it went up about 50%. And then what happens is
the people that then actually scheduled a call.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think it's just like if you get it right away, they're like, oh yeah. And then you send the follow-up and they're like, oh yeah, they took the time to email me their calendar. They're asking me about it. I need to do my due diligence. And then in the CRM, we'll schedule a follow-up for next week. That is, if they have not scheduled a call, send a follow-up email and message on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And then we'll go in there and do that.
Do you also send a reminder, like a day before, hey, looking forward to talking to you tomorrow?
If they schedule it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that depends on what they're using for the calendar. So like some people use Calendly, some people use like their CRM has a calendar thing. So it kind of just depends. Yeah.
I just know that in many occasions has been a real rescue. You get some of those people that they're just running really fast. Mm-hmm. And I think especially right now, that's probably really appropriate because it's like, the fourth Wednesday of whatever month we're in now, right? You're like, I don't know what day it is. Oh, we had a call scheduled for tomorrow. Yeah. And the power of sending a quick message or a quick email saying, looking forward to connecting tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's super critical. You saying that makes me want to go in and like check that. One thing like to reflect.
I automate it.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah.
I automate it. I schedule the email and schedule a pop-up on my calendar.
What I appreciate about Isaac is that 2 hours before the meeting on the day, he sends that reminder email. And there are days on Wednesday, I think it's Friday or Monday, and to get that 2-hour message, getting it a day ahead and 2 hours ahead really makes a big difference in my calendar and my craziness. And Mary knows right now how crazy I am.
And the thing is, like, as a service provider, this is the thing that, like, a bunch of us on here are actual service providers, is we have to be mindful of, yes, doing the email thing with the calendar helps. Yes, making sure that the before the day email goes out and is written well helps. We have to make sure we bill for that. And so when we have legacy clients, you have to, like, either do less and charge the same or charge more, or, you know, so it can be kind of a hairy thing there too, but whatever helps for conversions, I guess, needs to drive what we do.
Another thing that we do that doesn't show up in the market assessment is that we watch after the calls happen. So technically, it's our job to get them that call or get some people to agree to the call. Then when the calls happen, I meet with the clients on a monthly basis to find out what was the opportunity rate and what was the close rate. And we're tracking different approaches and how we're checking those all the way through to it becoming a client, because we found that sometimes we'll use one kind of outreach and a high percentage of people will wind up having conversations with the client, but they don't become, they have a low rate of buying, versus a different approach that gets a lower acceptance rate, but a higher close rate. And so that allows us to then modify our approach so that the client gets the most out of it.
Yeah.
Hey, Susan, are you teaching them sales also, top-down sales, needs-based selling?
No,
So,
we're not.
But
we're
that
not
would
sales.
make it, yeah, so what are you doing to help them close the deal? So this would affect the close rate, because it doesn't mean anything if they get the opportunity,
And
if they don't know how to identify the need, create the pain and sell to the pain. And then also, what is their sales cycle? So does your customer know that if they're selling a system that can be a 30-day sales cycle as opposed to a CRM system to a hospital that may be a year sales cycle? So how do you identify these things to make sure they get the close to where they do the business with you? Because if they're not closing sales, then it affects you.
Correct.
In an effect way.
And I ask a lot of questions, and I'm looking at, is it something we're doing or is it something that you're doing? And if I see that they either don't have a system. Now we try to learn that they don't have a sales system before we get involved with them.
Yes. Yes.
But sometimes they lie.
Yes. Yeah, I have a spreadsheet. Is what.
People lie?
Yeah, I know.
People lie online? I didn't know that.
Excel, that's my CRM.
Just teasing.
So if we see that that they have a problem there, we'll recommend a sales consultant to them, because that's just not what we do. But we want.
So you have a sales consultant?
We have some. We're always looking for new partners that we can hand off to people. But yeah, we do.
Oh, great! I'll contact you afterwards.
Okay, cool.
Susan, did you want to show us that spreadsheet or something? You don't have to, but
if you want to see it,
I would love to, because we have a similar. I'm guessing that it probably uses the same or similar numbers, but it probably looks different. I would love your feedback on ours, just to see if we're missing anything too.
It's pretty simple. So this was his current connection. So we're just taking how many he had on this. And this one, we didn't have to run the sales navigator thing. Normally it might be that we ran it. We would start with a sales navigator number, and then we would apply filters and accuracy discounts and that type of thing. The ideal prospects, what we're doing. Oh no, that's a different thing. Let me see where. So this is where we're looking at, sorry, I got my Zoom things in the way. we're just looking at their network size. We turn that into a ranking number, and then the profile quality, the activity level, and we.
That's really cool.
And then these numbers, yeah. So that's how we're doing it.
I feel like you could almost.
What does it take to get a 10 on network size? What constitutes a 10?
That's the more than 500.
Okay.
You know, if everybody would post something so that we could see what their actual numbers are, their followers, then we would use that number. But if we use it for some people, it throws it off for others. So we just did the 500 plus.
I get it exactly. Yeah.
You know what Judy told me that you can do, because it doesn't tell you beyond what the network size is beyond 500, but if you scroll down to follower count, that's usually going to be nearly identical to the actual connections.
Right. But if it doesn't always have the follower count. If they're not posting anything, if they're not active on LinkedIn, it won't have a follower count.
No, there's a workaround there. There's actually a workaround, and I'm trying to find the string, but it's their profile, and then it's /recent hyphen activity. It will give you their follower count. Let me find it, and I'll put it in the chat.
Cool.
Please do that. That would be a game changer, wouldn't it, Susan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Judy.
Not so many 10s anymore, right, Susan?
Yeah, right. That would help, yeah. What else do we? So let's see. So then this is the value. This is how we're doing that.
Right now. Let me put it in for everybody. So what you have to do is you take their profile, their primary profile, and then you just add after the /. So go ahead, pick a profile that has no activity, right? If you put in this string, it has a profile name. So, you know.
Can you put a full link in here, Judy?
Well, you have to, there is no full link because you have to put the profile ahead of it. So let me grab one. Let me do a for instance here.
And then Judy, am I remembering?
Screenshot?
Let me stop sharing my screen so we can look at, maybe Judy could go put one on.
Yeah,
This is big.
Yeah.
Judy, am I remembering, Judy, this is like, when you do that, it's going to be on the left-hand side, right by follow?
Yeah, so here, I'll grab my screen here and I'll show you. So if I go, now this guy has activity, so obviously this isn't ideal, but here's his URL for his profile. And then what you do is you add in this, after the /, you add in detail. So it's /detail /recent activity. And then that will show you his recent activity, and it'll give you the follower count right there. So if you pick a profile, it's, you know, it's one of those things where if they haven't posted, but there is some activity at some point, it will give you the follower count. So
but if they've had no activity at all, it will,
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Do you have one that you know that has no activity?
Not off the top of my head, I don't.
It's always when we need one of those. I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the workaround.
Type in a Tom Smith and pick someone from page 3. You know, just in a search.
I feel like I see that page quite a bit because part of our process is we will run a macro on Connect that'll go to the recent posts so that we can engage with them if it's appropriate to the industry common ground. And I feel like I have seen sometimes where it doesn't show it, but I feel like it's going to give you more data than you had before. Nice.
You see how that works? So what you do, you take, so here's what we did.
Fisherman.
You were brilliant, Mike. I love the way you think. So
He's under 100. He's under 500.
Right.
Someone over 500. Let's see if we can do that with a Tom Smith.
Tom Smith, right? And then I added /detail.
122 connections. So 122 connections.
And now it's going to show you followers.
149 followers.
And he's been quiet lately.
So we can assume that if he's 500 plus, it would do the same thing here, correct?
Yeah. Well, let's pick another one.
I was just kind of really wanting to see a 500 plus or.
Let me pick a. How about this guy, Great of Philly? Yeah, he's not. Well, 135. Let me pick. I wish it would tell us. Well, if they have a premium account. Yeah, see, this guy is active, so you can tell.
Does anyone remember being able to sort by number of connections? Anyone here?
Good.
Go back that far?
The database here, you know, wouldn't that be cool?
You can do a Bing search and include the +500 to make sure that only search results include people that have +500 on their accounts.
Can you show us how to do that? I'm trying to find one.
We'll do that another day because I feel like we're getting too far off the trail with what Susan's talking about.
I'm pretty sure that we're going to find that's the answer. There's no feature there. Yeah, that would work here with this one.
Let me add the string, and now this is going to tell us there he is, 15,000.
Nice.
Yeah, with no activity at all. That's the proof.
Yep, there you go.
How can you have that many and no activity? Wow.
Bots.
Yes. My favorite.
That's a huge. Yeah, that's the amount of followers there. So that's the string. It's /detail /recent -activity.
Cool. Susan,
Susan, from Joe Applebaum. So he's the source. He taught me that.
That's awesome. Hopefully, Susan, you got a little something here that can help you out.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Awesome. So can I share my my spreadsheet too? Did you? I don't want to take away. You're done. You sure? I saw lots of tabs on that Google Doc.
Oh yeah, but that didn't mean anything.
Okay, cool. Give me 1 second. All right, so this is kind of like a combo of what we would end up using for a reporting template and also for like estimating a few things, including the list value. So similar things, but different language. And we have like tags here where we've moved more to lists recently since tags are being funky with the inability to update them on a profile. But we're looking at wherever you see that it's tan here is where we would change the numerical value. So let's say your sale value, 5,000 is really low. Let's just change this to like, I don't know, 15,000. If their acquisition, so their annual client value or their sale value is 15K, their acquisition rate, so we give them a lead, they close, let's say 20%. I think 20% is probably high, but let's just keep it there. These are the numbers we usually see. It totally varies based on what you're selling, who your target audience is, but as a kind of broad stroke, we usually see about a 30, I know this is like a big variation, but 30 to 50% acceptance rate. And part of that depends on the city that you're doing outreach in. Part of that depends on if you only do the first couple pages versus if you go all the way to the back, right? Because the farther back you go, it really tapers off in the acceptance rate, that kind of thing. So just keep it at like a 30%, and then we'll see about a 50% engagement on the messaging. So anyways, with those kinds of numbers, assuming that's what happens, like if the list count is 10,000, we can expect about 3,000 accepts, about 142 convert to sales funnel, about 28 in acquisitions. And then assuming that the acquisition rate, and this is right, then this is kind of like the total sale value of the list size that we're looking at. Does that make sense? So very similar to what you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like what we're missing there is the 30% inaccuracy and that kind of thing, unless that's kind of rolled into what we usually see here. But I like your method a bit better, so I'm going to be borrowing some smart, some Susan smarts.
She steps on the scale just right. Is that kind of the idea?
Yes. Yeah, but I mean, do you feel like we're missing anything here?
No.
Okay.
Well,
so we've got 10.
So this is true numbers, Isaac? Or these made up numbers?
Well, these are made up numbers, but I plugged in what we usually see for percentages.
Okay, so now what's the industry? What's missing is the industry standard. What's the industry standard based on this? So you can see what you're doing based on what the industry is doing, and then you see the margin of difference.
Yeah.
So you're above the industry, below the industry. So for me, that's what I'd be looking for to make sure I'm on target.
Yeah. So I suppose this is more, we're looking at the list value, and our company metrics is a filter or lens that could skew this for better or worse, I suppose.
So then your numbers don't mean anything.
Now, they definitely mean something. They just might not be as perfect as if you did some estimation based off of more granular numbers beforehand.
I have a question, Isaac. When you have the client, right, the active users, and the one chart right above that, and it's 1% and 2%. Wouldn't that mean then your acquisition rate at the top would be 1 or 2% as opposed to 20%? Because the acquisition is acquisition as client, correct? So if
This right here?
yeah, so if your conversion is 1% of that segment becomes a client, or an active users 2% become a client, then isn't that the same as your acquisition rate? Why would your acquisition rate be 20%?
No, they're different. This is 10 people, 10 individuals became clients. And this is how many leads became clients.
Be multiple leads at the same client. Is that what you're saying? Multiple deals at the same place?
So this is just 10 of 1,000, 1%. But they might close 1 out of 10 leads. They might close 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10.
It just seems high. The acquisition rate.
Change acquisition rate to 5%. What else changes? Can you just change it to
So
5?
so acquisition rate is how many leads do you close? Kind of like across the board. So that's something that we would ask during a sales meeting is what's your acquisition rate usually? If you get handed a good lead, how many do you close? And a lot of times people will say, oh, probably like 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10. And I'm thinking everybody says that, and I don't ever see it that high. It's more like 20 to 50%. 50% being on the high end in my experience. But
Isaac, is this spreadsheet, is it automated? So if you change a value, all the values change?
Yeah.
So
if it's 10.
Do what Mike said, change the value of something and let's see how the spreadsheet changes.
Oh yeah, and also this kind of helps us figure if it's worth it. And so like if they're selling a product that's really cheap, if it's 1,000, if what they're selling is $1,000, then their sale value really goes down for the same amount of work, right? And if
did the other numbers? I didn't see the other numbers change.
These numbers?
Also, I just saw the end result change. Is that the only thing, or how do you automate the other numbers to kind of reflect quantity and everything?
So what we would do, Alfred, is every month we'll go into their LinkedIn account and pull the numbers and then update them where they're tan. So like on this particular spreadsheet, this is like we would change this to figure out the acceptance rate. We'd grab the no replies, not a lead, replied, converted, client, and just update those every month. Okay. And that's kind of that's kind of just like the reporting side.
Yeah.
And those are the averages we see, and then we can use the averages that we see. This is what we have done in the past. I'm sure there's a better way. And say, all right, if those are the common KPIs that we usually see when we're doing reports, if we're going to estimate beforehand, if we have a list size that's this big, these are the KPIs that we usually see right here, these 3. And then in the total sales, well, actually acquisition changed based off how good they are at sales. And then the total sales is a combination of acquisition rate and how much, whatever they're selling.
Makes more sense. Yeah. I get it now.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to dash, guys.
All right.
Because I got to get prepared for another call. Isaac, do you mind if I get Mindy to get in touch with you? Because she runs our performance lab, and that sheet that you were showing, I think, is a simpler way of tracking things than what she's doing.
Yeah, I'd be happy. I'll give you a Google Doc or an Excel sheet, whatever you want.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Cool.
Nice to see you all.
Susan, thank you so much for your time. It was so valuable.
For having me. Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Great information. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So helpful. So connect with Susan. Her profile link is on the email.
Yeah, I have already connected her. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for the valuable information. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Take care.
All right, everyone, I gotta go too. I got something at the top of the hour here, so I got.
All right, we'll end on a high note.